Hey, what's up YouTube? Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. This company MillerCat reached out to me and asked if I'd be willing to install this catalytic converter shield on my 2007 Honda Accord and make a quick little review video. And I said, of course. Now, unfortunately, my catalytic converter has already been stolen on this vehicle, and I did make a video on how to replace it with an aftermarket catalytic converter. But what's happening is people are now stealing the aftermarket catalytic converters. So this shield that MillerCat makes comes in two pieces, but they also add a little piece that goes in between, so you can specify whether or not you have the original or an aftermarket catalytic converter. The edges of this are pretty sharp, so it's a good idea to wear some gloves. Now this one here is the rear shield, and that's what we're going to start with. Everything else is underneath here. As you can see, it's all packaged nicely. All the hardware is labeled, and there's a nice set of instructions here too. Now I have already installed two other MillerCat CAT shields, but the process is different depending on the vehicle. So I am going to read through these instructions and make sure that we do this correctly. The one thing that's a little bit unique on this one is you have to use these rivet nuts. This is something I've never installed before, and I don't have a rivet nut tool. I watched a few YouTube videos on how to make one, and I'm going to see if that works. I don't think it'll be very difficult. There's 6 of those that we have to install, and that's actually step 1, is to install the rivet nuts into all of the existing holes. The nice thing is you don't have to drill any holes. This is what I'm going to try. I don't know how well this will work. If it doesn't, I'll let you know, and then I'll order a rivet nut tool. They're actually not that expensive, 30 or 40 bucks I saw on Amazon. But so this is just an M8 bolt. This is a pretty high strength. This is 10.9. And then this is just an oversized nut with 2 flat washers. I've actually put a nut on here as well, just because I don't want these threads to go too far in and run into something. I think we'll be okay. But then you just basically thread the rivet nut on here. And the washers are nice. Not only do they help the whole thing spin, but it also creates that flange, because when you put this in, you're going to want to create some upward pressure and make sure that it stays in the hole. And then we should be able just to tighten this bolt here. That should pull on this rivet nut and get it to expand in the hole. So let's get underneath and first install all of the rivet nuts into all of these different locations. All right, so we're already on jack stands here. I've got it lifted nice and high. I don't have a lift here, but if you have a lift, it'll be much easier. Now, I know it looks like a circus underneath here. My catalytic converter, I've painted it and engraved it. This blue tape is just covering the license plate numbers that's engraved into my catalytic converter. You can tell I'm kind of paranoid now because I've had this already happen to me. None of this is 100%, but just all these little measures that you can do to protect your catalytic converter are helpful. So let's start with just the rivet nut location. So there's a lot of these holes that are already in the frame that we're going to be using, and this is one of them. This is the next one right down here, but we do have to take out this little plastic cap. And then the third one on this side right here. And we'll just work back to front. So I'm gonna pop out this little plastic black clip that's in there. Here's how it goes. You just put the rivet nut in there. You can see it's already working. See, it's starting to bulge out. It still came out of the hole, so I've just dropped it down there to show you real quick. But let's just hold it up there and tighten this. Okay, I can feel it starting to bite on there now. See, it's definitely staying in there, but we need to keep going until it doesn't really turn anymore. There, you can feel it bottoming out right there, and then we should be able just to back this out. Because I've doubled up on the nuts, I have to get another wrench on this one here to back that out. Looks like this nut here was not really necessary. Well, there you go, that worked. Now, I'm sure that's not the cleanest rivet nut install ever, but it looks like it's gonna work. The threads are nice and clean and it's in there firm. So let's keep going with this method. All right, here we go, hole number 2. There, you kind of feel it bottom out. Let's back this out. All right, and the one in the front is right here. Getting the handwork out here. And there it is. That's bottomed out. We can back this out. All right, now on the driver's side, it's this hole here. Moving back this way, this hole here, right in front of these two. And then this one right here. And there's no plug in this one. And we could probably use like an impact on this, but I just want to make sure everything goes in nice and smooth and straight, so I'm kind of taking my time. Oh, look at that. Or our washer became a part of the rib nut here. Well, you might call that a mishap, but I'm not too worried about it. I don't know if we just didn't have it pressed up there tight enough or what, but I think that washer will just pop right out. So I think my design flaw is my washers are too big, because this rib nut itself kind of started squeezing up around that washer. So you might want to make sure when you do this you get a little bit smaller washer, or closer to the same diameter as the rib nut. So I just grabbed another smaller washer and put it on there, and let's see how well that one works. Okay, so this little DIY rib nut tool actually worked pretty well, but I did end up adding a different washer here at the end, because what was going on is the rib nut was actually getting sucked into the washer itself. So adding this one here, this smaller washer, as long as it fits snug around the bolt, you should be fine. You definitely don't need the extra little nut here, but you do need just this larger one. You put one wrench on there, tighten that in, and that will expand the rib nut, and that worked fine. I thought about buying the real rib nut tool, but at 30 to 40 bucks, you know, this was really about $1 or $2 in the hardware that I already had. If I was doing this again, I think I would just reuse this same little DIY rib nut tool. If you're gonna be at a shop or do this a lot, then it might be worth buying the real rib nut gun, the actual tool. I'll get links to that in the description if that's something you want to pick up. But for me, just making this out of a bolt and a nut and some washers was easy enough. All right, you can see we've got all of the rib nuts installed in all of the correct locations. Now we need to remove these two flange nuts on either side. There's two on the passenger side and two on the driver's side. And these are a 12 millimeter. This one looks like it's scraped up a little bit. I think we did some off-roading or something, I don't know. But looks like a 13 fits over it. Let's see if that'll take it out. There we go. Same with this side here. And same thing, looks like this one's scraped up pretty good. There we got it. Now the back of this heat shield is held up by these two little 10 millimeter bolts, and we need to take those out. All right, now we're ready to install the rear shield. You just line these up. Now, these two right here, you're only gonna use one of these M8 security nuts, because we're gonna reuse the original bolt in the other hole. And then we're gonna use another one of these. Remember, these all need a lock washer and the fender washer. And we're gonna put this back one in. And then here's the original bolt. We're gonna reuse that. Just one of them on either side. Now, it'd probably help if you had an extra set of hands or somebody holding this, but it's really not that bad. I just got one side started and let it kind of hang down. It doesn't seem to really bend this or anything. One of these is a security bolt. The other one, you're going to reuse the original hardware. And then we'll take the other security bolt here and put this in the back, in the rib nut. And then we'll put that original Honda bolt back in there. My rib nuts, I'm sure, are not perfectly centered, but so far they're working here and they're lining up. But don't tighten this all down until you have everything at least started, and then we can snug it all up at the end. For this little heat shield here and this part here, these are the smaller M6, and just make sure you get the lock washer and flat washer on those. Just get these started by hand. Same with the other side over here on this little flange, slides underneath this one here, and also holds the heat shield back up. All right, that looks good. The rear shield was actually pretty easy. All right, now we can put the front shield up. The instructions say to start at the rear, and so that's what I'm doing, is just putting these two rear ones in first. Just get those started by hand. You should probably have somebody holding this. I mean, you just don't want this to bend and deform, but this one's pretty lightweight, so I don't think we're bending it or anything, just kind of letting those two sit right there. On the front ones, you're gonna use the longer M8 security bolt, the lock washer, then a fender washer. And then here, we also have a spacer that will go just like so in between the shield and the rib nut. Same with this side here, just fish the spacer in behind the shield, put the bolt through and line that up and get it started in the rib nut. There we go. So the front shield is installed. Let's go get the last piece and we'll put that on. Make sure that you do order the extra piece if you have an aftermarket converter. And this is the orientation. This little cutout right here goes to the passenger side. You can see that this already has threaded inserts in it. All we have to do is just slide it in through the back one and just line up those holes and we'll get all those started. They send you a separate bag of hardware just for this aftermarket shield. These are the smaller M6, but just like all of them, you just need to put the lock washer and the flat washer on, and then we'll just line that up. All right, so everything's just hand tight right now, but it looks really good. Everything's lined up really well. Now these tamper-proof fasteners are M8 or M6, and they give you both security bits here. We're gonna go through and tighten everything now, and the recommended torque spec is 68 to 135 inch-pounds for these larger ones, and 37 to 72 inch-pounds for the smaller M6 fasteners. And they say not to use an impact or anything. Now you could use a torque wrench, but in my case, I'm just using a small little ratchet here. It doesn't have much leverage, and I'm pretty unlikely to overdo this, but use a torque wrench if you're not sure. I'm just going to make sure everything's nice and snug so we don't have any rattles or anything like that. Now on this 12mm head bolt, I'm just going to make this snug, just about the same that it was when I took it off. And that's it, that's installed. Actually went pretty easy. You know, even using those riv nuts, that's not something that I usually work with, but they were easy to do. This really didn't take me long at all. You know, if you're gonna do a lot of these, you might invest in that riv nut gun, but in my case, this was easy enough. I really like this add-on piece here for the aftermarket converter. I don't know how long this aftermarket converter is gonna last. Hopefully it'll last me a long time, but if I ever need to get to it, of course, you can just unbolt this and take it off. It'd be pretty simple. I think this would deter pretty much any thief. I mean, they'd have to be very determined, not only to attempt to cut through this shield, which would be a lot of work and make a lot of noise, but even if they were to try to remove it, they'd have to have the 3 different types of fasteners in different sizes in order to try to take this off. They're usually armed with just a saw or a chain cutter, and I'm hoping that just seeing this will be enough to send them on their way. Now, if you do have a 7th gen Honda Accord and you don't have any protection, your catalytic converter is very likely to be stolen. So I would definitely spend the money. These are not cheap, but they're not cheaply made. This is a very solid product. I think this is very much worth it for the price, because remember, the hassle, even if you have insurance, the hassle of having to deal with an insurance claim and potentially go without your vehicle for a long time. A lot of these catalytic converters are on back order, even the aftermarket ones. Now, I do want to say thanks to MillerCat for sponsoring this video and sending me this shield. I'm very happy with it, and this is definitely something I wish I did before my original converter got stolen. I do recommend painting and engraving too. It's definitely a good deterrent, and that's something I'll put links in the description to the paint and the engraving tool, and that would at least be a good start. But putting a shield like this, I mean, that would just, I think, send any thief on their way. If your converter was already stolen, I'm very sorry. I know it's terrible, but there are things that you can do like this to prevent that. It's just so frustrating. You just feel violated. It really ruins your week and puts you in a bad mood. If you have a 7th gen Accord and your catalytic converter is original, even if it has been stolen and you have the aftermarket, this is definitely something I'd recommend you pick up. I'll put a link in the description to the video that I made showing how to replace the catalytic converter with some aftermarket parts. Now, it shows a cheap converter that I put on, but in the end, I ended up taking that off because I decided to keep this in California, and I put on this one here, which is a Walker brand, but I did have to go through the whole smog referee and get a new label so that this vehicle could pass our California smog check. And the check engine light has stayed off, and this converter seems like it's working just fine. I hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I'll get a link in the description where you can pick up one of these shields as well. And MillerCat was kind enough to give me a coupon code for my viewers, so Dan the Fix-It Man, so that you can get a discount off of one of these shields. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.